Perfect. So we're going to start with lesson 3, week 3. We're in the midst of it. So this week is all about your product offering and your strategy, your product offering, strategy, and your feedback. So really making sure you understand the value and the demand side of the equation. So first, the biggest question, and this is one of those ones very easy to assume, yes, but very hard to actually implement properly, which is aligning the value with the demand. Because very often there's a lot of things that you want to offer and there's not a lot of people that want to buy them, or they don't want to buy them in the way that you want to sell them. And the question is, how much do you let yourself bend? Sometimes people bend all the way and they're totally happy with it because they're more loyal to the outcome for the customer than their vision of the product. Some people, it's a passion project and they're really connected to how they envision the product, the offering in their mind. And then if a customer asks for something outside of that, you feel pressure. You feel like they don't like what you've brought to the table. And they don't, right? But it's not because they don't like you. They're not judging you. They're judging the offering. So the question is, and again, it's not something you can just arbitrarily say yes to, how much are you willing to bend or adjust what you're offering to meet the demand that you find? Because there's really only two scenarios. You either find demand for something or you find demand for nothing. Meaning when you go have all your discussions, you either keep encountering problems and you go, oh, what I want to offer, they have problems that correlate and now I can just connect the two. Or you go, their problems are a little bit off of what I want to sell them. But I do think I understand what could solve their problem. Now, again, if it's software, you have to go, do I want to go develop that? If it's service, do you want to go do that, right? It's like, oh, they don't really want to buy this automated marketing plan. They want to buy a custom walkthrough, a 6-hour experience. It's like, okay, well, what if you have thousands of people that want to buy the 6-hour experience and nobody or very few that want to buy the automation? You don't want to sit there for 6,000 hours, but what if that's 6 million in revenue? And now it's like, all right, what are we doing? What's our goal? Are we going to bend or are we going to find a way to sell what we want to sell? Also, yes, always able to pivot and adjust. So what do you do next, right? That's like the biggest question. Do you stay the course? Do you adjust? And these aren't, fixed decisions. They change over time because your goals, your wants for the business, your team's wants for the business, right? They evolve as well in a big way. So lots of text, but I promise it matters. So how do we find alignment, right? This whole lesson, this whole section today is making sure what you're selling somebody wants. And it sounds easy, it sounds obvious, but it's like, no. This is the business. Everything revolves around just doing this efficiently, well at scale. Because we're not in the business of just prototype development. We're not in the business of HR or finance or legal. We just have to do those things fundamentally. We're in the business of connecting value to our customer, our offering to our customer. So it's one of those, it's so small, but it's everything. And if you do it right, it makes the rest of the business easy because people want what you're offering and they're going to tell people about it because they like it. If you have to push to your customer, hard. If your customer's pulling from you, if you're getting blown up, if you're getting texts, that's when you know you're onto something good. That is the beginning of alignment, of product market fit in that way. So this is how I kind of segmented in my head. So I have 3 goals to find alignment. First is understanding their needs, which is a combination of market research, prospecting, and leads. Now you'll notice a lot of this language is similar from other things. Well, that's fine. Because why do we need new material? Why do we need 100 new variables when we just need to do the old ones with either a new twist or new focus or a different kind of goal for the outcome? So in this way, we are doing market research, but we're doing it with the goal of making sure that people want what we're offering. So the way that I do this is first and foremost, customer segmentation. I try not to live in generalities with my customer, any customer. I want to segment men and women, tall and short, East Coast, West Coast, however they want to segment themselves efficiently, which basically means by buying pattern. If you had every type of person, every race, religion, background, and they all, for some reason, were aligned on one metric, that's one segment for me. Because it's like, hey, if I can just target them the way that they want to buy and speak to them about their problem, they're going to purchase, right? But if they all happen to be 18 to 25 men and women based on the West Coast, good enough for me as well. I'm just concerned that I'm accurate. I'm not concerned why I'm accurate, which is really important. Next, identify core problems. Sounds small, sounds simple, right? But here's the thing. Each individual customer segment can view the problem differently. So sometimes it's a management problem. Sometimes it's a fatigue problem, an annoyance problem. It's a whatever it might be that you're solving for. And depending on who's buying in, they might think about it differently. And of course, using their language will get you on their team. And that's the win. And last is you want to understand how the customer, and really it should be audience, because it doesn't matter if it's the person buying or just a middleman or somebody else involved. The important thing is that you're actually putting yourself in their shoes. And I get this. It's very easy to sell with the knowledge of what you want to give them. But it's also good to sell and relate to them in what are they looking for? What are their actual goals? What's their specific situation, right? Are they at the bottom of the totem pole, the top of the totem pole? Do they feel happy and want more? Do they feel sad and are trying to get to neutral? Like, where is this person? Because the tone of, what situation they're in, what their goals are, all of this changes how you engage with them, right? Are you selling upside or avoiding downside or anything in between? Next, product value proposition. So this is all about how you actually frame your product, your offering, right? Again, products and offerings, we're using it interchangeably. It's all about testing the reception. Pretty simple. People should love it. They shouldn't like it. Liking it is a great way to be forgotten. And that's the way it is. And it's okay, right? It's one of those, you don't have to have every customer 10 out of 10 love your stuff for you to have a successful business. But if you don't have people that are willing to advocate, people that are excited, people that, would give you enthusiastic testimonials because they love, love, 10 out of 10 what you did for them or was super impactful, it becomes hard to sell at scale, right? Because what story are you selling? People buy by emotion. And if you don't believe me, when's the last time something annoyed you and then within 10 minutes you bought something on Amazon to solve it? Right? It's like, oh, this thing broke. Forget it. I'm just buying a new one on Amazon. It's like, yeah, because you were annoyed. It wasn't because you sat and made a tactical decision. You're like, nope, Xbox controller broke. I'm buying a new one right now, instant. There was no secondary thought to it. It was just input, output. That's a great place to be if you sell Xbox controllers, right? Because that's just, oh, we sell it. And if it's available and it's first in front of them, they're going to buy it. Also, yes. So the two core questions that I think about with this are, what value can you provide? Again, you got to be specific because a lot of people, they say like, oh, I'm an accountant or I'm a consultant. And you go like, what does that mean? You consult, but what value? It's like, oh, I help people with their marketing and go to market for early stage businesses. It's like, oh, okay, now we're getting more specific on the audience and what you do for them and what stage they're at and what their goals are, right? And notice how few extra words I added and how much more it tells you about who the offering's for and how to maybe talk to them in that way. And the second is, how are you different to the competition? Because you're always competing. At a minimum, you're competing with the status quo, even if the status quo is doing nothing, right? There's plenty of problems that aren't worth fixing. The example that I like to use, which is silly, is the see-through toaster. Nobody knows when their toast is done, but none of us are running to go buy see-through toasters, right? Because guess what? The pain isn't severe. We can just wait. The alternative, whether it's just having a quality toaster that goes off after X amount of minutes or whatever, or just waiting for the outcome, is a totally fine solution for the customer. And it sounds silly and fun, but if you've tried to pitch someone something that you thought they needed and they just kind of shrugged it off, you were the see-through toaster. You wanted to be important. You wanted to be like, hey, I'm doing this. And then you didn't, or at least for them, right, in their perspective. And guess what? There was no demand. But if you show up there, again, using our little Xbox example, and some guy who loves Madden, his controller breaks, and then you walk in with one, it's infinite demand. They pay double the price because they really want the good. Even if you didn't do a sales pitch, you just have what they want. It's a good thing. So for me, the big thing that I'm always focused on here is a little shortcut, because again, it's hard to do all of this and memorize all of these things. Specific customer with their goals, with their pain points, with your action and the results. So I'll do a simple one. So we'll do an easy one like startup founders and accountants, right? Because everyone always needs that. So a specific customer is, early stage startup founders who have just launched their business this year that have never filed business taxes before. That's pretty specific, because I can run an ad that says, have you launched a business in 2024 and do you need to file your taxes, right? Like, I can immediately call somebody out. And if I'm wrong about either of those things, I can test. I have two variables to test. 2024, right? Maybe I call it startup, maybe I call it small business, some language stuff. But notice I'm trying to put myself in a little box so that way I can know what's going on in there. Customer goals. Now, the nice thing is this is an implicit goal, right? Like, pay your taxes or else, right? And everybody knows this. Thank you, government. So it's one of those, the demand is kind of baked in. But the same idea would be, again, you're selling sports tickets and you're pitching that there's a game coming up that's really important. That's going to be a once in a lifetime event. Same kind of idea, right? Customer pain points. It's like, oh, well, I've never done my taxes, or I don't know how to do it. I'm really scared of getting it wrong. And I'm nervous it's going to be really expensive. Well, think about all those things that the average customer would be scared of. And guess what I would do if I had that website? I'd be writing cost effective, first time friendly, full education, so that way you can feel comfortable. I would be speaking to them in a way to remove risk, remove fear. Because then if I get on that website and it says, hey, are you a first time founder that's worried you're going to do your taxes wrong? Are you looking for a cost-effective solution that's going to help you get your taxes right and let you end the year comfortably? Give us a call for a free consultation. Notice how it's all unified and it works, because notice I didn't charge $50 or $100 for that consultation. Why? Because that's not in alignment with the audience, right? You're talking to an audience that doesn't have a lot of money, that's focused on cost efficiency, and now you're going to charge them as the first thing. Would it be better if you can make money the first call? Of course. But would I damage your top of funnel so much by putting that there instead of just letting a bunch of calls come through to begin? No, because in the early days, we want to scale. We want as much inflow as possible. And that whole goal right there was all about making it as efficient as possible for my customer to identify themselves in my offering and then say hi. Because the second they say hi, the game is on, right? It's up to you to close them or do whatever, but you've engaged them and now you're in a good spot. Last is strategic road mapping. This is the whole future planning thing, right? It's very easy. And of course, founders start with goals that are very many years in the distance, which is totally appropriate because that's why you're doing the business. You're not doing the business to make 5K year one, right? But sometimes you do make 5K year one, and that's just how it goes. But the future is dependent on two things: the actions that you take today and the changes that take place along the way. So it's one of those, the way that I like to think about it is pretty simple as far as like day to day. Are my actions today leading towards the future that I believe I want today, in terms of if I'm Slack and I'm trying to make work easier, am I adding features that make work easier? Like, am I doing the things that if I had to answer, like in front of court, like, how are you living up by this? Give us a bulleted explanation, not a sales pitch. It's like, I'm doing this and this and this. It's like, that is a great thing. What's the better thing is to do those things with your ears open and your mind open, because you're going to go and you're going to be doing all these things, getting customers, having interviews. And it very rarely is just a perfect straight line of, I know exactly my demand, my customer. Normally there's some ping ponging in between, especially there's some up and then down, but then guess what? You went down so you could go more up, not so you could continue trending. And in that way, it's all about, okay, now if I understand, where my future goals are and what my actions are, I can start to pay attention to what's happening while I take those actions and go, hey, is my customer base really growing, or is it kind of growing? And was I growing 5% a month, then 10%, then 15%, and then one month I grew 12%? Ooh, is that because I'm tapping out this market, because my ads weren't effective, because of this, because of that? But notice I have like good questions because I'm paying attention to what's happening in my market, even though my day-to-day is still doing what my job is, which is, I believe getting more customers like this will lead to my end goal. You just keep doing that, but then you notice what's going on while I do these things. The vision, yes, perfect. That's everything on that slide. Any questions here? Hi, puppy. Perfect. So in a perfect world, we don't have a perfect world, we just have a world. We have an iterative offering cycle, right? And this is the way that I like to think about it. Again, every business, every venture, I keep it as simple as possible, which is, first we ideate, we think things. Then we develop the things, right? We turn idea into reality. Then we launch it. The sooner we can get through those first three, the better. Why? Because of the fourth one, feedback. Once you get past step 3, you're kind of out of 1 through 3 for forever, for like the specific cycle, because then it becomes a cycle of, okay, we've launched it. We get feedback. We get new ideas and fixes for that feedback. We relaunch. Then we go back and get more feedback. Then we fix those things. Then we relaunch again. And we do this over and over and over. And I've known startups that have done this process where they launched an MVP in January and did steps 4 through 6 for a year straight, while slowly getting customers and doing this and just grinded it out. But guess what? At the very end, their platform was powerful because they knew exactly what they needed. And once they were able to put the scale on, all they did is go to their biz dev partners and go, hey, check the engine we've built. I think your customers might want to give it a ride. And it's like, well, how do you know? It's like, well, we've tested it with 100 people and had 3,000 interviews. We're pretty confident, and let's give you a live demo. It's like they just cooked and over, like galvanizing steel. They just did it over and over and over. And by the time it was done, it was bulletproof. They were the board founders that I love so much, where they walk in and they're like, yep, here it is. I've talked to 8,000 customers. You could tell me to my face right now, no, you don't believe in my business. I got 8,000 customers that say they do, right? So there's nothing you could say to stop this founder when they know what's going on, when you've mastered this. And again, this is startup, small businesses, everything. It's all about how quality is your demand. And you keep doing it until it's done. It ends when you sell it, like all of this. Mm-hmm. And then you just keep pushing it, and then when you sell it, there it is. Mm-hmm.
If your idea is wrong at the beginning, or you're influenced by the, like we discussed,
sure,
picky, fall in love with their ideas and everything, agile development is not going to save your day. So even though you iterate through all these things, it's going to be fail anyway, right?
Correct. That assumes that you're iterating with your ears closed. But what I mean is this, what that is right there, right? You're saying, well, what if we just keep iterating, but the idea is wrong? It's like, no, the feedback would be telling you it's wrong. The only reason you're still iterating is because you're not listening to the feedback. Because as soon as you get feedback, it's not feedback build. It's feedback think. Sit. What is the least work we can do? What is the least develop? If you can solve it without code, you shouldn't use code. Like, you should avoid everything, because we're not in the business of just sitting around building things, right? We're in the business of selling things and delivering value to our customer. So the less work that we have to do to enable that, the better. Why would I have you do 100 hours of work if I could have you do 10 and then nap for 90? That's a better ROI, because you're going to close more sales calls because you're going to be well rested, rather than you just build an extra 10 features. And this is also one of the big focuses, staying focused. You can imagine if you have 10 ideas in this idea box and you're trying to get feedback on all of them and you're trying to fix all of them, there's 10 of these going on all at the same time, whether you acknowledge it or not, right? They're happening in the background. And so keeping it few, keeping it focused, if you had a choice, right? And again, it's good to live on the extremes, or at least examine it. If you could sell one thing and be a billionaire, or 100 things and be worth 10 million, what would you choose? Pretty obvious, right? There are lots of founders that make that choice every day, and they make the wrong one, because they go, oh, wouldn't it be cool if it did this and this and this and this? And it's like, yeah, but cool doesn't mean demand. Cool doesn't mean cash flow, doesn't mean revenue. And I like cool, but you're not talking to me for cool. You're talking to me because you want your business to work. So that's my focus. It's not on cool, it's on function. Because if it's cool and then business dies, nobody wins. But you'll be like, Aaron, it wasn't that fun. I'll be like, yeah, but like the 50K that hit this month was pretty fun, right? And they're like, yeah, it's a good conversation. We've seen this slide before. Why? Because it's really important. It's incredibly important. And the most important one is the bottom one, which is early adopter market. Lots of people, especially in the early stage of scaling, start to go, how do I get everybody, right? How do I start pushing and pushing? And my question is, have you gotten enough of what you've already started to tap into? Right? If you're not starting to feel like you've penetrated your narrow market, meaning you're like redundancy, you're seeing yourself, you're hearing yourself, right? Your customers, no customers, no customers. It's a good thing. One, because it means you're actually like selling and pushing and building stuff. it's a better thing because now you've got a whole network of people that know and love your work and want to help sell and connect you, right? But how much easier is it to scale that from city to city or state to state or marketing channel to marketing channel? Again, this is not just geography. This is only going all in on Facebook, only going all in on Florida, only going all in on online versus in person. I know companies that sell digital products that do 100% of their marketing via traditional media, traditional, boring, lame media, and they crush it. Why? Because they're not concerned with looking cool. They're not concerned with having a Facebook presence. They're like, no, we'll just take customers. Our investors like when we bring them lots of customers. And every time we throw money at this boring media part, we get customers. So we're not going to stop. We're going to just see what else we can optimize. It's a great place to be because they're not focused on the action. They of course care. It's not like they would do something that would be negative to their reputation, but they're way more focused on the outcome than personal, appearance in that way. Key customer segments. This is slightly adjusted from before just in terms of focus. Why? Because right now we're focused on the product offering, right? And the connection to it. So for me, I try to focus on the top 4, but I do it in chunks of 2. The first 2, demographics, psychographics, right? On average, again, of the customers that you've had, of the leads that you're talking to, of the people in your CRM, right? What are they, right? Men and women, lifestyles, purchasing, incomes, are they rich, poor, in between? Again, we're not here to judge anybody. The only thing we care about is accuracy, meaning who are they? Can we speak really confidently about our customer segments? And notice it doesn't need to be segment. It shouldn't be 1,000 segments, right? Because we're not Apple quite yet, but it can be a few segments as long as it's specific, right? If men and women are buying the same thing, but it's on the women's side, it's 18 to 24, and on the men's side, it's 20 to 35, it's okay to say, oh yeah, here are 2 segments. You don't have to mash everybody into one master customer segment. In fact, I find it more confident inspiring that you understand there's multiple. You're like, yeah, we have 3 primary segments and we market individually to each. I'm like, oh, this sounds like they're scaling. This sounds like someone who's focused, who understands customers and their buying patterns. It's like, yes, this is a very good signal to the market. Next is the buying motivations and pain points. That emotion. Got to tap into that emotion. And again, we're not trying to be evil capitalist here. We're just trying to speak the language that our customers actually want to hear. Because if our customers use the word, I'm frustrated, or I'm annoyed, or I'm overwhelmed, I want to use that word. I want to use their word because that's what matters to them. And it sounds silly and it sounds small. Does any of your marketing contain language that you can show me you pulled from a customer? If the answer is no, my question is, why not? Haven't the customers you've said interesting things, said things you're like, oh wow, they talk like that. Like I've heard this phrase from like 30 customers. Why aren't I trying it, right? Try one ad with it. Try one conversation with it. It's not going to kill you. And if anything, it might make you a lot more money. It might make someone really connect with your offering. These are good things. Number 5 is also important on the preferred channels. It's far better to be more concentrated in channels where you know there's conversion and you know your audience is. I would much rather suggest that you have just a Facebook or just a Pinterest or just an Instagram or whatever to get to your channel, or if one physical, media or whatever. It's not interesting if it doesn't work. Everything is interesting if it works. Because if you go, hey, I'm tripling my customers, I go, how? You go, billboards. I go, that's crazy. Tell me how. Like, it's interesting immediately, right? But if you go, oh, I have 30 Facebook pages and all this stuff, and each one has 6 followers, that's also hard, right? It also becomes hard in the early days when you don't have a ton of employees or you can't hire a ton of social media expert content managers. What's better? You sitting there responding because it's one channel, so all you have to do is just have Facebook on your phone for business, or check every channel every day, right? If you have one channel, you have every reason to answer everything that comes from that channel. The comments, the messages, this. And you know what builds brand really well? One-on-one interaction. There's an old email strategy, and I still use it just unconsciously. Some messages, if you get the message immediately, you get an email, it's worth 10,000 extra points if you respond immediately. So sometimes I'll get a message from a big investor and I could wait, 6 hours and respond to them. But I'm like, nah, I'm going to hit them back before the minute has even passed, because they're going to open their phone again and go, did I not send this email? Oh no, he responded the same minute. This dude's a psycho. It's like, yes, answer my call next time I call. We're going to talk about money. Like, sometimes signaling can get you a long way. Imagine if you messaged a brand on Facebook and asked them a question. They responded instantly. Wouldn't you notice? Your customers are just you. They're just normal people, and they will react exactly like normal people, I can assure you.
I think the number 3 is going to be the first one.
For business to business? Yeah. So for businesses, I would go, what's the concentration of businesses? Like if you tell me we work with small businesses, 10 to 35 employees in the management consulting space, I go, great. By state, how many of them are there per state? And then you go, okay, in New York, there's the most. In Arizona, there's the second most. And I go, okay, now within that, how many do we know people in? Do we know people in either of those markets that we can use as like bridges to make intros? So the demographic is New York. It's the segment. So either way, whether I'm talking to a person or I'm thinking about a business, I'm just trying to break it down into its characteristics. And the best part is, these are just starting points. Nobody cares how you break them down as long as you can break them down and target them. I'd rather you go, I don't really know. We just kind of target them. And I go, okay, what does that look like? You're like 30% conversion. I'm like, you know what? Fair enough. I'll talk to your marketing person and have them explain it more to me, because you can't. But I'm happy with the outcome. Therefore, it's okay. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You can do everything. There's everything here you can do with no money, no idea, no clue. It all works. And what I'll say on this is, you benefit from one of the best places, if that's true, again, on the market where it's brand new, education. I'll give you a perfect example. So I create educational materials, right? I teach people, I do stuff, I put stuff online. I talked to my cousin. I was on the phone with him. He was having like some little startup ideas and doing whatever. And I go, oh yeah, like give some stuff a Google, see what you find. And he goes, you know what's crazy? I don't find any like actually helpful like startup material that I like for me out there. I was surprised how little there was on YouTube. And he had seen Y Combinator and seen this and seen that. But think about that. Even in the hyper populated space at startups with thousands of people, including me, posting stuff all the time, some random customer, some first stage founder who's a technical guy, like very technical in the development world, went, I don't think there's that much out there. And if that isn't satisfactory, that probably means that your industry, you can probably post a ton of content that educates people and get free views. There's a world, just again, it sounds silly, sounds impossible, but everything sounds impossible until it's done, until it's history. There's a world where you start posting 1 to 2 videos a week educating on your topic. You grow an Instagram or a YouTube channel to 5, 10, 20, 50,000 people, and your entire marketing efforts are free. Absolutely a world that happens, because there's plenty of channels all over YouTube that have 5, 10, 20, 50, 100,000 followers that you've never heard of, with really engaged communities for cooking, for this business, for data engineering. I opened up Instagram and I saw some girl in an anime outfit explaining circuits, like for engineers, with like 10,000 people watching. It's like, there's no such thing as not having a niche or not being able to like engage. Exactly. I'll find it later. But it was crazy. It caught me so off guard. I'm like, I know that little squiggle. That's like, engineering.
I know one girl actually from Texas. She does the same thing.
Typical. So in that way, it's one of those, if there's not a lot out there, that's actually to your benefit, because that means you get to be the expert. You can go out there and teach and opine. And it's not that you have to speak from, this is my absolute authority. Go out there and post videos and go, hey, this is what I learned today. No one can hate on you for what you learn. No one can hate on you for how you approach something, right? I'm not saying go give the secret sauce to your business, but people like to pay attention, especially customers, partners, different people. I've reached out to plenty of people on Instagram or Twitter or LinkedIn when I see them post interesting stuff and go, hey, let's have a chat. I do startup stuff. I'd love to refer. They're like, oh my God, yes, here's my Calendly, here's this. And it's like, yeah, out of nowhere, because it's interesting. Mm-hmm. I would, but it's also like, again, I like the phrase and it sounds silly, but remember the movie. It's like, okay, what happened in Web3? Because that's already over as far as, right? So would you say Web3 is new or old? Well, it's like, well, a lot of people talk about it, but not a lot of people with competence talk about it. And the people that talk about it with competence are kind of like multi-trillionaires on another world. And then there's lots of content on YouTube that's all trading. So it feels like there's a lot out there, but very little substance. I would think that AI, again, from my analysis, seems to kind of follow similar trends. And I'd argue a lot of mainstream topics follow that because everybody wants to opine, but few people actually like know things. But the people that do know things, they slowly get an audience. Absolutely, because people want knowledge. They always do. And you can get views. And I say that so confidently because me boring doing nothing but talking on an Instagram or on a TikTok, 2 of them got over 100,000 views. And I am not beautiful and in an anime thing. It's not happening, right? They were sitting there just listening because they wanted to learn. So when you say, Aaron, I don't have content, I can say you're a liar and I have proof, right? You can absolutely create content. Absolutely. And again, I'm not saying you have to be a social media star. If you're like, I don't want to create content, great, make phone calls. I want you to talk to everybody in your network and ask them if they know the type of customer that you can talk to. And I want you to use your network. Well, I can't do that. Can you pay somebody to do that? Although that's concerning because, again, you got to be active in your own process. But again, like I said, there's never an excuse that will work. There's just something that you're not willing to do. Always. There's always a way through the problem. Always, always. Just a question of, can you think of the idea and are you willing to go that far? Top 3 research methods. Again, this came up before, but if it came up before, have you done it? Right? Again, polite challenge in that way. So it's 1, survey. Surveys are great, but they're more valuable later. That's just the way it is. If you're going to do them, here are some tips. Do numeric stuff. Again, get scales, get ratings, get some data points that you can actually pull. Plus fill in the blanks. Why? Because you want people to use their words. Now remember my whole remember the movie? It's like, hey, we've seen that before. You have filled out a survey before. If your survey is a nightmare to fill out and it's 17 clicks and pages in this, no one's filling it out. If it's 3 questions, 1 of them is fill in the blank, 4 of them are numbers, you're probably going to get a good amount of people to fill it out because that's really easy to fill out. It's low effort. Remember, it's hard to do the things that we want to do. Why would you go out of your way to do something random that somebody on the internet wants you to do? You just wouldn't, right? This is why surveys are also great with the people you already know because they're going to do you the favor, or friends and family, or your network. Surveys can be helpful, but it's not the end all be all, and it is a poor substitute. I mean, the poorest substitute, right? Like air for bread substitute for one-on-one interviews. Gives you nothing. Market research isn't something that's going to like shed this amazing, light on you unless you go to like conferences and learn something innovative. But it's something that's so easy to pick up big stuff. Big stuff like trends, keywords, industry focuses, things people are blogging and yelling about. If you look up your industry, you're definitely going to see softwares that are trying to like service your industry. I read tons of competitor websites. Like, how do they speak to the customer? How do they phrase this? How do they talk about themselves? How do they position their product? They're spending tens of thousands of millions of dollars doing their UI, UX to sell stuff. You should go get some inspiration from it. That's free. Last is interviews. Nothing surprising there. Sit down and talk to your customer and not sell them. And it's the classic. If you don't sell them, you'll make more sales doing this than most other things. You'll just sit there and go, and I've done this plenty of times, hey, I'm not trying to sell you. I just have some questions. Will you give me some honest feedback? I want to, you're a good archetype for my customer or whatever. And they're like, yeah. Then I ask them a bunch of questions and I go, oh, thank you for the time. And they're like, send me the info. And I'm like, thank you for your time. And they're like, send me the info. It's like, yeah, because there was no pressure. So they felt like he's not selling me. I'm buying from him. Now, one, that's a great place to be from a sales methodology, but genuinely, the sales the least interesting part of that conversation. It's a data point to let you know that what you were asking was right, but that's one customer. But the data point that you got from that can go be applied to 100 customers. Because now it's like, hey, what did I say during this that I didn't say in the other ones? Who was I talking to? Maybe did I say the exact same things, but the person I was talking to was just the right audience? and it was instant for them, what there's only so many variables, right? So it sounds silly, but your conversion rates are in percentages. Small changes change everything. So thinking about these things and being watchful of yourself, like monitoring, your own outcomes can be very helpful, and it will be especially helpful in interviews. Any questions here? We've chatted about this before. I won't walk through them again. I just want you to have them and stare at them again and look at them and tell me, again, when you look at notice they're in red. If you were to go talk to one of your customers, right, whether it's a present customer, a customer you want to have, and you ask them these questions, which ones wouldn't you know what they're going to say? Remember, if you're bored, you know the answer to every single one of these to them. You're like, yeah, I've talked to 200 of these people. Here are the 3 things they're going to say that's hard. Well, if you talk to a manager, they're going to say this part's hard. But if you talk to the admin, they're going to say this part's hard. But they both end in the middle because it's like, ooh, that is a founder that knows their customer. That's a founder that can speak their language and probably convert them. This is a good thing. I look for 3 things. Specifics, meaning like, hey, on the call or on the interview, I learned that Samantha, when she approaches this problem, last Thursday, she went about it like this and this, and here's the situation that came up. I care about themes where I go, how were the last meetings? And I go, well, all of the managers were more annoyed than the associates. I feel like we need to talk to managers more. They seem like they had more emotion with it, like they would make a better buying decision. The associates didn't really care. They were kind of, blasé about it. It's like, oh, that's a good theme. And then emotion. Who was happy, giggling, smiling, and who was cursing, right? Not at you, but at the problem. If you bring up a problem to someone and they go, oh, fuck. Yes, that is literally the best thing you can hear, because that's someone that's annoyed, right? That's emotional. And I'm not saying, again, we're not trying to take advantage. We're trying to learn. That is a learning, like when a baby cries, that is your customer crying right there. And you're going, yep, I got to pay attention to that. What drove that? Was it the specific they were talking about? Was it the general, but they were just really, they're excited about the whole problem? I don't know, but I'm officially curious, right? I'm not curious when they're like, oh, it's whatever, but they go, this damn software just doesn't connect to the other one. And I go, how much time does that cost you? Sounds like you come across that pretty often. And they go, yeah, I come across it like 10 times a day. I'm like, oh, okay, so this eats up time every single day. And what does this software do? It's like, oh, well, this moves our invoices from here to here. I'm like, oh, so you collect money slower because of this? Like, yeah, way less money. I'm just fishing, right? And it might be wrong sometimes. But if I catch 1,000 fish, I'm going to get some trends. Which bait worked, which didn't, etc. Perfect. So it sounds like this is kind of a little pivot right here. This isn't a super long slideshow, so we have time for questions and stuff. But the reason that this is kind of the pivot point is because everything up to this slide has been about the singular customer, which is the one that matters the most. This is kind of like when I talk to you about your startup future. I go, tell me about the present 80%, tell me about the future 20%. Not because I don't care about the future, but I care enough about the future to care about the present more. Because I know if we don't do the present, there is no future. If we only talk about the future, it might not come. And I care enough to go, yeah, it's exciting. Let's be excited in 3 years about it. What are we doing right now? That's a better outcome for everybody involved. This is one of the ones where it starts to go, okay, the main benefit, the 90% is on the singular customer, because there is no we. There's no such thing as we, the customer. Your customer is just an individual set of eyes that all act independently. They don't think we managers need this. They go, I as a manager am frustrated with this. They think of themselves as individuals. I would do the same. So as we shift away from that, meaning we go, okay, we understand the individual. How do we treat the individual at scale? How do we start to think about getting bigger, getting more? What are the things that are going to break? Here are some of the things that I think about first. This is like my first checklist where you go, Aaron, I want to scale, and I know I'm going to get tons and tons of customers. I go, great. Let's just make sure the brakes don't fall off, right? First, your tech infrastructure, especially if you're an earlier business, right? It's the basics. Website, CRM, email. Website is simple. Is your website in a position to be in front of 100,000 eyeballs? Is the spacing right? Have you checked for typos? Do you have a privacy policy? Do you have a user agreement if your software? Like, are you ready? Because remember, if you launch a business to 10 customers and they each have a problem, it's 10 problems. If you launch a business to 100,000 customers and they each have a problem, that's 100,000 problems hitting your inbox. This is why sometimes it's good to actually not be huge to start, because you want to fix all of the vast majority of the problems that you can early, so that way later you're only dealing with very boring or very like unique issues. There's a reason you can get most of your stuff done on Amazon via an automatic agent, because they just did this so much. They're bored by you're telling me you shipped something from one address to another and then it didn't show up, but you still got charged. They've encountered that unique situation a million times. So they just have a code for it. Just this, done. They only have to deal with a person when the overly unique extreme side happens. That's you the same at scale. But right now, you just got to churn through all of them. CRM. If you doubled your customers, if you tripled your customers, if you got the first 100 customers, could you track them? Would you lose them, right? Do you have a CRM set up to import everybody to? Could you send an email to all of them? If an important system update or offering came out, for example, you're like, oh, I'm a consultant, I want to offer this new thing. And I go, great, let's email them right now and tell them about it. Is there a platform right now that you have access to that's synced to your CRM that will let you do all that? If not, this is something probably worth thinking about, because what if you want to run a discount at some point? What if you want to make an offering? What if you want to do all these normal course of business operations, but some of the software, some of the infrastructure, as you can see, isn't built to support it? An email, again, sounds simple. If I sent you or your customers, if 1,000 of them reached out, is your email set to filter? Do you have a support email? Does everything just go to yours? Do you have your inbox nice and color categorized, however you like to be organized? Could your infrastructure take it, right? These are important things to ask. Servicing and support. I put them both on the same line. Why? Because servicing the customer the first time is just as important as supporting the customer in the long term. Why? Because ideally the customer gives you more money over time. That's a good thing. But more than that, your customer has the ability to hurt your brand. All of you have had a bad experience at a customer service place on the way to a friend's house. And what is the very first story you told when you got there? I went to AutoZone and the dude was so rude and he tried to overcharge me. I came in for this. Like, you just start flaming the company. And it's like, yeah, that company really messed up, because not only is that customer, right, that first servicing probably not coming back, what do you think everybody at that house thinks? Even if they don't really believe that person, if I saw an AutoZone and then I saw another O'Reilly, whatever, I was like, you know what? John really did have a bad time at that AutoZone. I'm going to check out this other one. And you may not even be conscious of that thought. And if 1,000 customers do that, it doesn't mean anything to anybody. You don't notice. But if 1,000 customers went the other way, aka your business, now you've got a crazy month. Now you're in a unique spot. These are those little tiny things. So making sure that's servicing. This is why I say love, because likewise, if you have a great customer experience, the example I use is when I was like in high school. When I was in college, I had just gotten an internship to do investment banking. My mom was really proud. Everybody was excited. It was cool. I went to the mall. It was like, oh, you got it. Like, I always had like the little Velcro horrible wallets. So my mom was like, you should get like a nice little leather one. It'll be fun and it'll be your New York thing, blah, blah, blah. I buy a wallet. I walk into a store, Mont Blanc, the French one with like the little circle and whatever. Walk in, talk to the guy. He asked why I'm buying it. Never had that asked before, right? But not like in an invasive way. Just like, oh, why are you buying your wallet? Like, what brings you, what inspired this? Later that week, we got a handwritten, could have been fake, could have been done by a machine. Do I know? No. Do I care? Also no. I got a handwritten thing saying, good luck in your internship in New York. I hope the wallet, blah, 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 nice things. Let me ask you a question. How many times do you think I've told that story? How many customers are now very aware of how good a quality service Mont Blanc has? They made so much money off of me. Because I tell this story all the time, because guess what? I still think about it. That is a great customer experience. And there are people that think of your customer experience as the same way, especially if you deal with something that's really important. I help people with their finances. I've helped some people out of some pretty crazy spots, and the emotion, the response that comes back is huge. Same thing if you're dealing with food, same thing if you're dealing with something delicate like healthcare or anything else. People care, it leaves an impression both ways. And one can make you a ton of money, and which is also good, right? In addition to helping customers, and the other can really hurt your brand. This is why you care about the individual customer in the sense that you want each one to have the best experience possible. And you do that by servicing all of them as best you can. It's kind of a weird balance. It's which kid do you love more? Which one are you going to sacrifice? It's like none of them. I have to find a way to save them all, but I treat them individually, right? You kind of a weird little balance. Next is quality control, right? Servicing and support. Can you actually provide the value? Because providing it, it's like if you're an accountant, you got limited time, right? Unless you're providing a software or you have some tech-enabled service business, whatever, it's hard to provide all this value all the time and keep going at 100 miles an hour. Trust me. This is why quality control matters, because of course, the big bad explosions happen all the time, right? Where someone goes and complains about their car repair. But all the little things happen all the time too. Meaning when it's time to redo your taxes and your accountant, you had to send them like 3 extra emails to get the info that you needed for whatever, the next time taxes come around, you remember that. And it wasn't some earth-shattering, you hated the experience, you're going to tell everybody. But if the opportunity to switch to another accountant came up, you probably would. And I've seen this happen with lawyers and marketers and business development people and accountants and plenty of other people. So it's one of those, be humble enough to know that everyone's neck, mine, yours, everyone, is on the chopping block if we do not deliver the value, if we do not treat our customers fairly. Here's the nice thing. You're never going to have 100% customer satisfaction, 100% perfect, but that's not the reason not to aim for it. You should aim for it, right? But it's okay if you don't hit it. But there's some people that are like, yeah, we're at 70%. I'm like, well, sounds like you're not, regardless of your motivation, you're not helping as many people, you're not making as much money. And if you're happy with either of those, great. I'm not here to tell you how to build your business. You can have your own goals. But if you keep telling me I want to grow my business, and I'm like, well, make your product a little better so they love it. Make your service a bit better so they love it. Fix some of your infrastructure so more people can buy it. That's not the exciting work, but that is the work that's necessary. Working on your CRM is never going to be fun. Throw on Netflix and work on your CRM. You deserve to have a good CRM, right? Because you don't appreciate having all this infrastructure until you do. And then you start going like, oh, I need this done and this done and this done. Oh, I can do this, this, this. And then your day's 10 times more efficient. But notice I'm not just saying build everything all at once. All this comes at the end, right? Because once we have all this information, then when we start going, hey, what kind of process should we scale? What kind of things should we make better, faster, more efficient? You actually have a reason for efficientizing something, right? Not just going like, well, everything sucks, we should fix everything. It's like, no. We had to have priorities here. So here's an example. Again, I try to keep things very real and practical of how I have scaled a process. So here's a very real, very easy process specific to lead gen. So back in the day when I first got here, I needed to do a ton of outreach, a ton of networking. Didn't know anybody, hadn't done a ton in terms of like be around the startup community here in Florida especially. So I was like, all right, I'm going to reach out to a bunch of people on LinkedIn. Just going to do it every day until they say I hate you. And then I'm just going to keep doing it. So I said, all right, here's the process. So I started reaching out. I'll explain. Let's assume it all went well. I got responses and all that. So identify the process. Outreaching to prospects on LinkedIn for cold lead generation to sell financial model servicing to. Is there any gray area there? Right? Who am I reaching out to? Are they leads? No, they're prospects. Why? Because I don't know if they can buy yet. I have no idea. I'm not assuming anything. I know that I need volume of people, right? Before I assume that they're leads that could buy. What channel am I reaching out to? LinkedIn. What's the energy I'm coming in with? It's a cold outreach. So I know it's got to be cold. What's it for? Like, I'm not just talking to these people for customer discovery. I'm trying to get customers. So I know my exact goal. This is not a learning, even though I am always learning, but I'm trying to win here. There's an outcome that's a goal. And what is the goal? To sell what? Specifically financial modeling services. I could have just said consulting, right? But that would be a very general audience, right? Because lots of people want consulting. But the type of company that wants financial modeling is probably more specific. I'd rather have 10 of these that are specific than one that's general that doesn't do anything. Now we get to validation. Now I assume that I have the process, I've defined it well. Before I ask myself how to fix it, the first thing I ask is it worth fixing? Lots of people improve lots of things that don't need improved because they weren't that, good to begin with in terms of in demand, right? It's easy to spend time on 100, features. If people don't want 95 of them, not for nothing, you wasted 95% of your time, right? It's a choice. If it was fun, great. It's a personal reward. If you're upset because you wasted the time, you didn't have to. Pick whatever you like. This is just an example. This could be any process. This could be filing your taxes, doing your outreach, reviewing your leads, working on your offering, servicing customers. Any process, this idea of first, what is the process specifically? Who's it for? What does it do? All that kind of good stuff. Second, am I sure it works, right? Do your customers like your product or do they love your product, right? Same kind of idea. Third is improve the manual speed. Manual speed sounds silly, but it's just the way it goes. Before I try to involve any like AI, any automation, because I just bug my AI guy for that and be like, hey, I want this. It's like before I bother him, I go, all right, let me get it as quick as it can be manually. Meaning if I was just sitting there, how can I turn this into basically copy paste, whatever I'm doing, outreach, messaging, whatever it is. So in this way, I went, okay, first I'm going to create an SOP of all of the initial messages that I send and some of the most common follow-ups. Why? Well, because at a minimum, if I don't have to type it out every time, I bet you I can reach out to like 5 times as many people because now I can just sit there, click, okay, here they responded like this, copy, paste, adjust, send. That just took 50, 60, 70%. And again, you just go, Aaron, I can just type it again. Do you want to type it 100 times? Do you want to type it 1,000 times? Because if the excuse for why you didn't reach out to 100 people is, I don't want to sit there for 3 hours and type it the whole time, I would say, why are you putting these weights on yourself? Why aren't you finding an easier way to do it? Because I reach out and used to reach out to like hundreds of people and took 30 minutes, 40 minutes, 50 minutes because I was just like, okay, copy, copy, copy. I knew exactly who I was targeting, paste, 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 control V just over and over and over. Inbox full. Third, validate again. Why? Because just because you've standardized the process doesn't mean it's, a great process. So before I go to the technology side, I go, can I get any more juice out of this lemon? If it's only meant to return 10%, meaning if the industry average is 50% close rate and my close rate's at 70%, yes, I could try to get it to 80%, but I'm already crushing it, right? I'm already doing well in this metric. Are my other metrics up to par? Is this the weakest of them? Are they all above industry? Or is there something that's more broken? Because yeah, I'm closing all my customers, but I'm only getting a 10% response rate. That means I need to get 100 people to get 10 to respond. What if I was just able to double that? I wonder what that would mean for my conversion. I bet you I'd get more ROI out of that than the closing, right? And then you start doing the math and figuring out, where am I weak, right? Where can I improve that's holding me back? For some people, it's lead gen. For some people, it's customer servicing. For some people, it's feature development. For some people, it's their admin. I know people that have had, and I've seen it because I've seen their books, thousands of dollars in revenue, tens of thousands, that they just never invoiced because admin wasn't their thing. And they couldn't get over the hump to get somebody to do that work. And it literally cost them money. There are absolutely things, again, this is not a judgment, this is a we, because we're all in this. There's absolutely things that we could be doing better that are actively costing you money, whether it's real money or opportunity cost. And opportunity cost is learning, knowing about your company, knowing about your customer, all the good things. Then we go to automation. Because once I automate it, it is cooking, right? It's supposed to work. It's supposed to work well. I'm expecting results. You'll notice I put and monitor because it's not just automate and go away, right? It's automate and protect and maintain and validate and make sure, because automations break. Lots of things break. Everything is very delicate. Bulletproof glass is delicate. It's like, yeah, we're going to have to watch this stuff. And we want to make sure that it gets better over time because audiences are going to change over time. So just because I'm converting 10% today doesn't mean I assume I'm going to convert 10% 6 months from now. There's always a watchful, again, the Harvard slogan, only the paranoid survive. survive, be paranoid. And then notice the first thing I did was I didn't go build some crazy custom solution. I just found an automated outreach solution that meet my needs, clicked yes, signed up, away we go. So again, this is absolutely real. I've turned the system off because I don't use it anymore, but this is how I did things and got plenty of customers from it. Now we've talked about how you scale, right? So now it's kind of like, all right, here are some of the core mechanics on individual process scaling, but now let's talk a little bit about some of the strategies. Again, I like the strategy side. First is the focused offering. We've talked about this. More than likely, you're offering too much. I know I'm offering too much, right? Everybody offers too much. And there's risk in only offering one thing, because then if you fall out of favor with that one thing, it can be delicate. But there's greater risk in my mind of not even getting started, of not getting over that first hump if you have 5, 10, 20 things. And there's no rule. It's not like 1 is okay and 2 is suspicious and 3 is not allowed. It's not that. It's just you show me by what you can tolerate. If you show me that you're bogged down by tons of operations because you're trying to build 3 things, I'm going to go maybe too much. You're physically telling me via the bags that it's too much. If you're crushing it and you have 5 features, great. How is the utilization of all those features? Are the people that you expected to be using the features using them? Are they getting the ROI? Are you tracking ROI per? Digging. It never ends, right? And it's not digging just for digging's sake. It's trying to learn until we sell the company. Again, it's just the mentality, never stopping learning until the company is sold. Next is standard operating procedures and automation. I always start with SOPs because the best case scenario when you want to automate something is you go, automate this. There's no like, oh, now I got to like explain how this whole thing works. Like, no, you got videos, documentation. You have 100 instances of you doing it. Now there's something to actually fix and automate effectively. So now you get the benefits. Because here's the thing, automation comes at a cost, minimum time. If something only takes you 20 minutes to do, and you spend 200 hours solving it, you're going to need a lot of those 20 minutes to add up before you start saving any money, right? Same thing. Hey, we want to automate this process. It costs you $50K to automate. It's only going to save us $10K a year. We're going to have to wait 5 years to make this back. Maybe we should look at something else. And it can be tempting because it's still positive ROI, still money. But this is where that, again, you want to be smart with your time, especially when you're small, because everything, your resources, your energy, your customers, they're all way more limited. So you have to be, again, hungrier with what you have in that way. Last is hiring. Hiring, I start last because, one, I want to make sure the offering's good. If the offering's good or not good, it's bad, customers aren't going to want it, team members aren't going to be inspired by it. If the offering's great, you're going to have lots of customers and you're going to have a successful story to tell that people can get passionate about, and that's a good win for building the team. From there, it's really a question of what type of person. Part-time, full-time, interns, contractors, service providers. You're going to end up having a little bit of all of the above at some point. Just some things I'd like you to keep in mind because I come into these problems all the time. Just because you want to call somebody an intern or a contractor doesn't mean they are. Especially not if they're like very involved in your company. You go like, oh, but I just pay them as a contractor and they only work like 20 hours a week. It's like, yes, but, and again, this is one of those things you just learn over time. So I can just give you the quick knowledge. I'll send you the link later. Somebody can remind me in Slack. On the IRS's website, it defines how to define a contractor versus an employee. And it's not just up to you. One of the big ones is behavior. If you have the ability to control what someone does, meaning their software, or you train them, or you give them specific guidance, notice you don't tell your tax person how to do it. You just say, please do my taxes. So that's why that's a contractor relationship, right? Same thing with lawyers. You don't tell them how to lawyer. You just have them do it. But if you get involved and you're training, guiding, very hands-on, you may call them a contractor. That's an employee. And I wonder if you paid your tax on that employee. Now, one of the benefits of being a small business, the government doesn't really have enough money, right, to come after you. That's not really a good thing, right? Because lots of small businesses make mistakes that they don't realize because no one's beating on their door, right? If someone was beating on your door the second you messed up, you pay the fine, the big companies implement an SOP, it never happens again, right? But you're little, which means there's going to be lots of problems and lots of things that come. That's why it's really important, especially as you look at hiring, one, to do it because it helps you build your company. Even if you just want to be an army of one, you should be an army of one with an executive assistant and a finance person and a bookkeeper. You should be out there adding value to your business or your life, not just trying to do everything all at once, yourself. But you need to have the team. In order to have the team, you need to know what kind of team you need. In order to have that, you actually have to have the jobs for them to do. In order for them to do those jobs, you got to know which jobs are worth doing, and then how to do those jobs, and then how those jobs connect to your offering. And it goes all the way up to the very beginning of the presentation, where fundamentally it's, are you offering something that people want? Because if you are, everything else, as long as you have the right, again, let's call it right, but it's more constant, aggressive, annoying pursuit of improvement and efficiency for the sake of the customer and the owner. So for me, I try to balance it because not everybody has to make a $100 million business. I don't care. Make whatever business you want. But whatever you're doing, I hope that these strategies will help you do it well, do it better, do it easier at a minimum. Two things on the hiring thing, because there's a lot of schools of thoughts on hiring. I'll just give you two of them. And here's the deal. It doesn't really matter what you agree with. You can just do whatever you want. But here are two that I like. One is hiring for what you're bad at or not interested. This is what I like to do. I am a finance guy. I find bookkeeping very cumbersome and annoying and boring. I pay for that to be done, right? Same for my taxes, same for this. Because could I spend X amount of hours doing my taxes? Sure. Could I have more fun and make more money doing consulting, doing anything else? Yes. So it's actually like a bad ROI for me to sit there and spend X amount of time on whatever it is. I like to do what I'm good at, the work, the strategy, the biz dev, the customer stuff. That's what I enjoy. Hire out for everything else. There's other people that I know, for example, especially people that are in sales, they like to hire for what they're great at. And that's also a good thing as long as you don't ignore the first one. Because if you're a great salesperson, you can spot another great salesperson. You can sniff them out. You can give them the tools, the resources. Because if you're not a salesperson, you try to hire one, it's hard, right? Because you don't know what you're aiming for. You don't know how to KPI them, how to manage them, what info they need. But that's why it can be very advantageous to hire, what you're good at, depending on the role, because then hey, I know if this role is doing its job. When you hire a lawyer, you only know if the lawyer was good at the end when you need the contract. You only know if the tax accountant was good at the end. These are all end things, right? But when you hire people on the internal team, especially the sales people, the marketing people, people that are ROI facing, their value is apparent immediately, right? And it's a question of, all right, I've had people that have hired salespeople and paid them $6,000, $7,000, $10,000 a month for 6 months to get no customers. Didn't happen because anyone on the team was dumb. It happened because of one valid excuse, which became another valid excuse, which became this was happening. And that's life. But again, it's one of those, if you don't think about it early, you end up being a victim to it later, of course. It's a balance. Having employees is great. You just pay a little bit extra money, right? And it's one of those, again, we're stuck in capitalism. That's just the way it goes. If you can't afford the employee, it means you're probably not charging enough, right? Or you don't have as many customers. And that's a business problem to be solved. The answer is never, I couldn't afford to do what I needed to do, not because I don't care. I believe you, right? Things are very expensive, but the government doesn't care, right? The people that make the decisions that aren't me, they don't care. So for me, my best job for you is to tell you this, right? And tell you it matters. There's no such thing as a small business exemption to doing the legal tax compliance finance. It's just you have a little bit of wiggle until you're big enough that they decide to make an example, which you've seen that happen plenty of times. Types of feedback. I just want to highlight this really quick. 2 types, quantitative and qualitative. And it's important to get both. Quantitative is the numbers. How often do you do this? How important is this 1 to 10? All these types of things. Qualitative are the stories, right? It's the interviews. It's the verbal. I actually like Bezos's view on this. I saw a video of his. Again, always be learning. Try and listen to all these guys. They had a piece of feedback that their phone system was supposed to get picked up in like 60 seconds. and they were getting complaints that it wasn't. And he goes, well, our KPIs are showing that it is. Well, you have a decision. Do you look at the KPIs and go, well, I guess the KPIs say it's fine? Or do you go, I'm going to believe the narrative. Let's call our customer service right here in this board meeting. And they did. And then 90 seconds passed. And they went, something's wrong in our KPI tracking. The customer's experiencing the real deal. And we are trying. Notice the business didn't have bad intention in this example. It's like, hey, we provide 60 seconds. But because their intention didn't match their reality they're offering, and then their data didn't track their action, the customer had a bad experience and management didn't even know. That is Amazon because it's huge and complex and blah, blah, blah. These types of things happen on small scales all the time, whether it's you didn't check a box or you didn't put this in or you forgot about that. These things happen. That's why it's important. Failures are fine. Mistakes will happen, guaranteed 100%, I promise you. Making the same mistake is the problem. It's boring. At minimum, it's boring for you, right? But mistakes should be innovative. They should be creative. They should be big and bold. They shouldn't be, damn, we didn't pay our Florida state tax again. We owe an extra $500. It's like, oh God, like so boring. Just pay the thing. You know what I mean? Common pitfalls. I think this is last slide. Second last slide. Ignoring negative feedback. So easy to be the hype train. I get it. I love it. Your business is amazing. But listen to the people that hate it. Listen to the people that reject it. And some people are going to be useless. And what I mean by that is they just reject it on principle, whether they don't like you or they don't believe in AI or they think it's woo-woo, whatever. It's not important. What is important are the people that raise valid concerns. They go, I don't know, it just feels expensive. I don't know how much I would use this. I don't know how this fits in my daily life. These are things that are scary because the question really is your business worth anything? Are you really offering something people want? And it's terrifying to face that question, but you become a better founder and your business becomes bulletproof when you take the time to ask yourself this. Because you ask yourself these hard questions, then by the time the investor or the customer or the biz dev person comes around, it's a joke, right? Because you're like, listen, you're never going to be more aggressive with me than I have been with me on like why and who cares and somebody could pay this elsewhere. It's like I have answers for every single one of those because I went through it, right? Some of these I learned because I thought it through. Others I learned because I was like, damn, I was caught off guard in that customer meeting. I had no idea what to say. I need to think on that. I need to get better. I may have lost that customer, but I will win the next one. Overcomplicating the offering. Your value should be simple. Even big businesses are simple. Microsoft builds decent computers at okay prices. Amazon gets you stuff you don't really need but want quick. That is the complexity of a multinational, multi-billion. And they also do some data stuff. Like that is it. The problem is, again, you're lost in the sauce. I get it. You should see me try and explain consulting. I just go crazy. But it's very easy for me to break down your businesses. Why? Because I'm not connected to it, right? This is why it's really helpful to talk to people, your friends, people that you trust, explain your business, and then say it back to me. And then whatever they say, go, can you say it with less words? And then do that again and again and again until eventually you get it. We had an old thing, a little joke. It was called cavemanning it, which the idea is use as few words as possible. Imagine each word cost you money. Microsoft make decent computer. If every word costs me 1,000, that's all I'm going to say. Like that helps you because then when you walk up to me and go, here, let me tell you about my business. And then you start to use 18 filler words. I'm like, damn, 18 grand right there. And you just wasted it. Like hit me with the value. Remember, limit, you may not have spent the dollars, but you're spending someone's attention span. When you walk up to an event and you take 10 seconds to say what you're going to say, remember, these important people or the people that think they're important, they're looking, but if you say something interesting quick, they're going to go, oh, what's this? Because remember, they're on the hunt. But if you don't, that fish gets away immediately. Failure to iterate. Stagnation, just like water, right? Stagnant water kills, stagnant offerings kill. Times change, products change. There's a reason why so many things have become SaaS. One, of course, corporate greed, classic. But the other is that there's more demand for people going, I don't want to pay a huge fee up front. I'd rather pay something more over time and then cancel as I go. That's a general movement, right? In that way. It's like, okay, that's an iteration over time. That is developing and listening to your customer over time. Misinterpreting feedback. No, don't assume anything. If I go, what'd your customer say? And you go, I think they meant this. Why? Why are you thinking? Ask them, right? Ask clarifying questions. And it's not like, oh, you think this, right? It goes, oh, that was really frustrating. And be like, oh, well, like how annoyed were you? Was this just like a one-time thing, or is this something that like really upsets you? Because notice one of them, you come back to me, you go, they were really frustrated. And then the one, I asked that question and they go, honestly, it was just that day. It was so friggin' hot and I dealt with this problem first thing in the morning. I just was really annoyed. It's a fine thing, but the big thing that I actually care about is this. Again, I'm using an extreme, but those extremes happen in small ways all the time. But if you're not taking the time to validate, to listen, to go, here's a good one. If it supports your argument, don't trust it. That's one of my favorite things. If someone says something and they go like, oh, that makes total sense. I go, wait a minute, say that back to me again. Explain it to me what you think I said. I just want to make sure we're on the same page, because if we are, great. But if we're not, I don't want to walk out here, one of us happy, or both of us thinking we're happy, and one of us is really sad, right? Neglecting competitive analysis. The big thing here is your clients will not neglect the competitors. They always will. Again, something as simple as, hey, I want to get, I'm moving from my apartment, so I had to get like a cleaning service. Guess what? I just went to Google and I was like, cleaning service for move out, Miami, Brickell, blah, blah, blah. Loaded up the top 5, went to them, immediately started, all right, what's the offering? What's the price? What's the offering? What's the price? Check, check, check. Oh, these two are annoying. I have to reach out to them to get the price. Delete. Went to the other ones. Oh, these two have a fixed rate. I don't know if my apartment's going to be that, but I'd rather buy something that I know the price than get like a $400 quote later. Booked. They won because they were higher on Google and because their information was available. That's it. I don't know the owners. I don't know their reviews. I don't know nothing. But I was buying because of need. That is a great place to be. Notice I can't negotiate. I can't go like, well, I just won't get my apartment cleaned. It's like, no, it's going to be a fine. I have to buy their service. Therefore, some of them went, we're going to provide everything. I'm going to let them book the whole way through, because if I can just capture that booking immediately, I bet you I beat some of my competition. They did. Good for them. Last is lack of prioritization. There's always things to do to be busy. There's always, whether it's the admin you have to do, whether it's the product stuff, whether it's the this. The problem is busy is only an acceptable excuse to yourself, because it's a place where it ends. Because everyone's going to give you the pass. If you say, oh, I'm busy, I couldn't do this. Great. But you getting the pass doesn't help you move your business forward. So busy is not helpful, because I just assume everybody's busy. We all have things, whether it's obligations, interests, etc. We don't want to work 1,000 hours a week, whatever. Okay, well, what are you going to do with those 20 hours you do work? Because if you are an HR person and you go, I just love HR, and you spend those 20 hours doing HR things, I'm going to go, okay, you were busy this week. You weren't productive this week. Productive would have done the things that you don't want to do that move the business forward. Because, hey, your taxes are due soon. Did you call that finance person that I sent you the link for? Oh, no, I didn't. Why didn't you do that? I did 50% of the work for you. Oh, but maybe I did too much of the work for you, and now you devalued it. Now you don't appreciate it, right? We are humans at the end of the day. So if you notice that you're like, I don't really want to do it, you should do it. You should write it down. And there's a great book called The E-Myth Revisited. Has one of those great, just like always quotable things, which is these two brothers like ran a shop and they had to take out the trash every day. And one went, I don't have time to take out the trash. And the other went, I don't want to take out the trash. And they're like, okay, we have to pay someone. Because if I won't and you can't and it still needs, what are we negotiating here? Like, it needs to be done. So it's either you, me, or we hire. So my question for all of you is, what are the jobs that you need to do? Because it's either you, your team, or you have to hire, right? And you're like, I don't have time. Let's open up your calendar. Walk me through it. And I bet about 10 seconds in, you'll go, I don't really want to show you my calendar because I think there's like a 6-hour block open tomorrow. It's like, yeah. Everybody has time. And I'm not saying there aren't important things to do. I'm not saying you won't be making sacrifices. I'm not saying that you won't have people on your phone while you're doing it. But there's time. Turning feedback into action. The feedback loop process. That's the reason I started at the beginning by explaining that loop. You can collect a bunch of feedback, but if you don't act on it, it does you nothing. right? So if you go pitch a bunch of people, if you go to these events, as an easy example, you use a pitch line and you don't get that many connections, guess what? You should fix it, go to the next one, test again, see those KPIs. Now you know. And remember, nobody remembers or pays attention to the little stuff. When I was first networking, like nobody cared or paid attention or did anything at all, right? Now I've had the opportunity to do a bunch of really cool, fun stuff to help founders and be engaged. But remember, the whole time before, again, I'm not even saying I'm somebody, but it's like I was nobody the whole time. It's like, no, 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 yes. And the day before yes is still a big fat no. So that means that just because you're getting a big no right now, that has literally no implication on tomorrow. You can absolutely change everything in 24 hours, unless you don't change anything, in which case, welcome to the cycle. Prioritization, impactful. It's very simple. If I was to say, what are the 3 things that would most move your business forward? And you already know how I like to move businesses forward. More product, more customer, everything else. It's like, okay, well, how can you get more customers? Oh, well, I have to do this other thing. Okay, once that's done, how you can get more customers? You're like, well, I don't have any customers to sell something to. I have to get a product. It's like, all right, so we're not going to talk about customers at all. Product and your legal, because you need your legal to do your product, because you need to get a bank account. So first we do legal, bank, then we get the product, then we go to customers. So even if that whole week was just legal and finance, that was impactful because it unlocked the next thing. So just because you have to take a step back doesn't mean you're not really preparing to take 2 steps forward. It's a good thing. Connect with me. Welcome to week 3.